As we move ahead, we have our next panel, the third panel of this day, where we will be talking about open data and industry case studies. I would like to invite the moderator of the panel, one of the leading data persons, Professor Avik Sarkar, the visiting associate professor in data, technology, and public policy area at the Indian School of Business, to please take over and introduce the panelists for this panel.
Thanks, Arushi. So we have spent half the day of discussing open data. It's really nice that we think that in 2020 we are talking about open data in India, because this is usually a topic that gets unnoticed and doesn't get too much priority in the country. Data is now in the spotlight, and we are spending a whole complete day not talking just about the data science or how you work with it, but what open data can do for us. Open data, when we use the term, is primarily what we look at is data that has been made available by the government. It can also be open data, maybe made available by corporations and private bodies. So we had started the day where we were the two biggest government players who are there making data available. The data.gov.in and the Ministry of Statistics talked about how they are sharing their open data, their vision. And then there was address by five different panels, open data platforms in India, about how they are making open data, making data from different government websites available for the public at large. It was followed by a session on data-led journalism. These are all the non-profit aspect of data we are talking about. Data, if people have to take open data seriously and this has to be sustained, there has to be a business interest around this. And I think the best people to take it forward is the industry, the folks from industry. So we have a stellar panel here where we have five of my very close friends, if I use the term, and colleagues who will be talking about how they have used open data for certain use. It can be either a business objective or making some policy decisions or anything where they have used the data, which have been made available by government or some aspect. And then we have a very short five presentations, which will be followed by an address by Dr. Rohini, who is the CTO of Microsoft at around 2:35 p.m. So without spending any more time, I will directly go to Raghuram, who is an ISB alum and also heading the healthcare vertical at Reliance Jio, and they are doing excellent work using data, which I am really fascinated about. And Raghu, all yours.
Yeah. So hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I hope you can see the screen. So today I'll talk to you about how we actually used open data as part of one of the initiatives that we did with Reliance Foundation. So this is an initiative that we did with a government entity called INCOIS, which stands for Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, in partnership with Reliance Foundation, and how we use technology and how we used open data plus technology to solve one of the core problems for fishermen. So just the context for it, fisheries is actually a huge business in India. So it employs more than 14 million Indians, both in catching the fish and then the whole market around it. It's worth more than $6 billion. It covers all the 9 coastal states of our country and more than 4,000 villages there. So we call this problem for fishermen as a decision between life and livelihood. So the thing is that just like how we look at our own weather forecast today to make a decision on what we have to do on the land, a fisherman has to make a decision whether they should go for a fishing or if the sea is rough, then would their life be at risk. The second problem statement they actually have is the ocean is a very vast place. If they don't go in the right direction and the right place, their journey to the ocean would actually be waste, right? So they need to venture in the right direction, go to the right place where the catchment is high, and then they need to come back to the land in a safe way possible. So for that, they look for the ocean state forecast, which is released by the INCOIS. So they have a lot of oceanography algorithms. They use a lot of satellite data to figure out the forecast across about 1,400 of these various fish landing sites that are there. And then they release it on a daily basis and sometimes multiple times during the day when there are cyclones in other places. So the challenge actually is that this site is something like this. It's open data available for any of us to actually go and use. So if you click on one of these sites, then it actually gives the information of the 0 to 20 kilometers, 20 to 50, and so on. It gives the direction of the wind and everything, but it's very hard to decipher this data. So while it is all available, the challenge for, if I have to say on a typical day of a fisherman, the challenge for them is that, hey, I need to go to this portal, find the site where of the village where they want to actually start fishing, and then look at this data that is given based on the ocean wave height and wind speed and so on and so forth, interpret those values and make a decision whether they should go or not. So one of the things that foundation team has been doing is that they had a set of like interpreters who are looking at this data on a day-to-day basis. They convert that into something that is a tangible insight that can be understood by the fishermen, and they were delivering it as part of an SMS or a WhatsApp and geo chat in a simple audio and video formats that can be understood by them. But the challenge actually is that, is that it takes a lot of man efforts. Getting this data and then writing it for 1400 landing sites is not a humanly task, converting that into audio messages. So the simplicity is that why don't we deliver this insight at a district level? So there are, instead of about 1400 villages, we can translate that to about 30 districts. So 30 insights can be generated. But we all know that a district is a huge area, and what is available at one place is the weather is not the same at the other place as well. So we took it as a technology problem, and there are three problem statements we are actually looking at. One is that how do we automate the data ingestion and interpretation of this data across all the fishing sites? The second problem statement was that how do we make the insight accessible in a simple audio message or a video message for inclusion of all the population? And the third one is that rather than generating in the language, for example, if a Tamil farmer, fisherman is actually going to the fishing from one of the coastal parts of Andhra, then rather than giving a Telugu insight, he can actually get this insight in Tamil. So why not generate the same insight in all the languages and make it more inclusive? So Machli is something that is derived out of it. We actually built this app in 9 languages and English. So English was not the language at all. We enabled English after a long time because it's built for India and for our fishermen. And English is not the language we want to go after. Second problem statement was that it's available for all the landing sites of our country. And then it is a screen read. So all the text is read. So even if a person who is illiterate can read through the text and be able to use that. There is an audio advisory that is available. They can click on that and they can listen to this audio advisory. Similarly, the landing site from that GPS is enabled on the app, so they can see where the fish location is, the distance from that location, as well as there is a compass already enabled so that the fisherman can just point to it and then just drive towards that. Right, and we also provided a simple mechanism in case if any of this is not directly, if they need any information, they can actually directly one-click call to Foundation and then seek help there. So it's available both on JioPhone, which is what we call as India ka smartphone, and Android and other places as well. So I'll skip the demo part of it, but you get a sense in terms of how it looks like. So from an impact, right? So I'll just spend some time. So the first 3 months of this app analysis, so the app install started with trying about for 30 fishermen, and then it just kept on with the word of mouth, expanded into more than about 10,000 users in a span of 3 months. The retention rate is about more than about 50% on a weekly retention, where the users are coming back and listening to this audio advisory, and with an engagement time of greater than 1 minute, which indicates that the audio advisory is being listened to by each one of them. So we validated that by, if you look for, so prior to launching this, fishermen were calling the Foundation helpline number and seeking this data on a daily basis. But we reduced these calls to less than 15%. So from about 8,000 fishermen who are launching the website to less than 1,000 were really going and then calling RFIs again for any information possible, right? So we call this as like the funnel, like how technology fundamentally translated the problem from a human intervention to a personalized insight to a completely automated system. From a business impact, right? So a market study was done where 95% of the fishermen reported that the empty trips to the ocean were avoided by following this forecast, and were able to see more than 18 crores of operational cost benefit and about 2 crores of additional income generated. And with 85% of the fishermen were able to minimize their losses on the life as well. So going back to the first problem statement we started, it's a decision of life versus livelihood. We are able to save the lives as well as increase the livelihood of the fishermen by actually using this data to the reach of the fishermen. So it was well received. Some snaps around how fishermen were using this app. We were winner of the 10th Aegis Graham Bell Award in the application for social good category for the benefit we're able to deliver, and it is covered in newspapers as well. So something that is very interesting, that we got a message from one of the fishermen in Africa saying that, hey, they saw this app, they really like the benefit of it, and they were seeking like, hey, can we also benefit someone in Africa as well? Right. So net, right? I think just want to conclude that open data is extremely useful. Like, I mean, all of this was possible because what Inquise was really doing there. They did the hard work of converting the algorithms and then identifying all the right weather forecast. I think that was the base on which everything else is built. But open data is required, but open data is not sufficient. What we need to also do is, on top of open data, we need to complete that end-to-end solution so that the end user really gets benefit. And if we can actually solve this end-to-end, I'm just showing fishermen as an example here, but I think the same thing can be taken for a farmer, for health, and every other incentive we have, where if we connect from data to solution and then the reach, I think we have a great solutions that we can really build and then make a true societal impact. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Raghu. That was an excellent demonstration that you gave. It's simple, I will tell it. Yes, there were technological challenges. You would have done it because doing it in Indian language is not an easy thing. But it was simple from the concept perspective and huge impact. And I really loved one slide particularly, that it didn't enable English for a very long time. I think we should try and do that for a lot of things in India, maybe working in government offices too. Try to be local instead of talking and doing everything in English. Thanks for your address. Now I'd like to invite Gaurav. He's the CEO of Data Analytics Services and doing a lot of awesome work. Gaurav, over to you.
Thanks, Avik. Let me start with the story. So let me tell you a story. So it's a story of businesses falling in love with your customers. Seems like you're not able to view my screen, or like you. Hello.
We can see your screen, Gaurav.
Okay, perfect. So 5 years ago, what time? So there are two businesses. One doesn't want to share the data. They pay a lot of money to data brokers to gain insight. Follow traditional approach to product development. They are 100% control freak. There's another set of business who believe in data sharing, act as both producer and consumer of data. They participate in data marketplace to satisfy data need, leverage open and linked data. I think this is what Raghu was talking about, how you can link the data, open and linked data platform for product development. So they both were profitable, even with no sustainable differentiation. Then a storm hit, which turned the whole operating model upside down. Imagine if these businesses were banked, like with now open banking or API banking, or even if you are operating in a hospital or healthcare kind of a setup where you have to be very transparent when it comes to capacity or number of beds which are available, or whether you're automotive player, who's running BS6 compliant vehicles, will they be still relevant? Are we using right tools and business model? So let's just try to understand consumer also. Let's understand what our customer has grown up, is connected, empowered, socially active, experimental. They're very expressive now. They live in a moment, have become bargain hunters. Everything around him is connected, people, things, and places. Geographical boundaries are blurred. Lives in a world where experiences matter. World where data has become new normal. As a business, how can we make sense from these signals or cues? And this is where I'll come to the next part, which is more from a case study standpoint. So by one of the Gartner review, by 2022, 35% of the large organization will either be seller or buyer of data. by European Data Council, close to 200 to 350 billion open data market size is forecasted in 2025. 100,000 digital twins model will be available by 2024. There's a lot of technology changes happening. There's a lot of behavioral change which is happening around the world, especially with the COVID. Social, economic, lot of changes are happening. How we can map opportunities and create a world of new possibilities. So designing for tomorrow is where we started looking at from these cues, how we can transform, how we can see new opportunities, new possibilities, whether these possibilities are generating from open data, private data, or any data, how we can make sense out of them by linking all the data sources. So this is where I'm talking about the linked data. So let me pick up first case study. So this is one of our client who is a leading card processor in the world. So they have a commercial payment, where they fund merchant, where they fund consumer purchases at the point of the sale. So the challenge was, despite of the growing business, they were making losses on few of the top merchants. Some of the merchants went bankrupt, leading to delinquent accounts. So when we looked at the problem, we looked at it more holistically. So we not just looked at the financial data, in case of India, you can pick up financial data from MCA. In case of UK, there's a lot of information which is sitting within the company house. Company financial market data. We looked at news, Twitter, social reviews. So these are some of the data sources what we looked at. Company data. So typically, this is something which we miss when we are doing a kind of due diligence from a company standpoint. We actually looked at MCA, director bio, company notes, key appointment or resignation, because one of the hypotheses we were running with, if some of the key appointment is done or some of the key resignations have done, is there any cause and effect on the financial numbers? Change and event data, risk data, so which is again available as part of your regulatory data. Maybe we picked up from a data observatories. So climate risk data, regulatory data, these are all some sources of open data. So even the trend data, what data.gov or Google Trends are shipping tomorrow. So we looked at different sources of data, structured, unstructured, open, private, third party. And then what we did, we built, ingested those data, discovered and curated, developed the linkage. We delivered key insights, which merchants need handholding, right? So if there is a reputation in the market, this merchant is going bust, the chances of my client having a delinquent account is high. So what are the key merchants I need to handhold? Can we sell a protection plan because there's a downturn in the economy or there are job losses? Can we generate a prospect information on the issuing side? So same framework I played around in an Indian context to look at whether this can be applied to save home buyers from potential real estate fraud. It can be used for risk financing or risk assessment of financing of companies through data room applicable for both debt and equity funding. So this was one of the use case which we delivered in a industry kind of a setup.
In the interest of time, I'll go over directly to Himanshu from IBM, the weather company, and request him for his address on the use case.
So very quickly, I represent a business which is traditionally a forecasting business, but now we are really into user enablement and highlight of our capability, blending open data and private commercial data for better decision making across businesses. So everyone is talking about agtech these days, and weather plays really some challenges and brings some opportunities for agriculture. So I want to sort of lay over a bit on agtech and, of course, cover what all other benefits such data sets can bring in. Now, very recently, we announced a new forecasting model, which we believe is one of the largest initiative taken for predicting tropical weather in India with greater insights. So this model is called GRAPH, which is Global High Resolution Atmospheric Forecasting System. And essentially what it does is that we are taking a 3-kilometer grid in atmosphere and now processing it digitally to bring a 500 square meter view of what the weather would be on the ground. So think about a marginal farmer. Can we predict an accurate weather on his farm, on his village or taluka, etc.? That's where we are going. And this really needs a lot of fine grain data sets as well as a lot of technology to process such data. For people who are interested in technology, here's a view of what all it takes to build this model. So we use around 84 servers with 500 CPU-only servers with NVIDIA chips to use IBM Cloud and Power 9 chip to get this whole thing working. And a partnership is with NCAR, which is one of the biggest source of weather data and a lot of good research, what they do with their MPAS model. And this data comes really live for India. Now, how does a weather forecast comes together? Now, there are a lot of bits which come in, but here's a pictorial representation of how it happens. We run the world's largest outsourcing sites for weather stations, which is called Weather Underground. So we get a lot of real-time data from there. We also get data from over 50,000 aeroplanes which fly every 24 hours across the world at various heights. We pick a lot of data points, including pressure from there. We also get data from modern mobile phones, which have a gyrometer and a barometer in them, so precise pressure readings apart from other data they set. And then we take it through our own proprietary models to bring back a 15-minute update for a resolution of 500 square meters across any part of the world's Earth's crust. Now, if I pixelate the world into a half a square kilometer, you would imagine we'll get 2.2 billion points. And at a good day, a lot of people chime in to look at weather for their location. So we have been seeing a traffic on a ugly weather day to go down to something like 24 billion API calls in 24 hours. So if I just give you a sense of that number, Google, and you can Google this question, on how many search queries Google gets every 24 hours, the number is around 6.9 billion calls or searches. So in sense, we are like almost few times of that with 24 billion searches or calls. Now, a lot of this data is now strategized for various usage. So what you see here is a lot of our products which are meant for agriculture, which are meant for renewable energy, which are meant for retail, which is meant for healthcare, etc., etc. So I'll not go in detail for the benefit. People can always read this on our website. But the whole idea here is that weather being digital is very useful as an input into many decision-making systems. Apart from what naturally we think, people are looking at weather for health in a very, very different way than we ever imagined. How temperature would change the cause of any health issues and going forward. I'll just quickly get to the point I'm trying to make is how does this open and commercial and proprietary data comes together to help people. So if I look at customers, these are few decisions you want to make according to weather every day. So what hairspray I will use based on what is the fizz in the air? Or would I really want to travel today on leisure or on business based on the weather? What is the mosquito activity going to be like? I mean, we have fears of climate change, season change in India, etc. So again, not going in details, but these are the decisions you want to make personally. When we get to agriculture, the farmer is really stressed for knowing a lot about unknown variables. So what you see on this chart is on the left side is unknown variables, on the right side is controllable variables. Now, controllable variables will get you, you'll get them from all the work which you're doing physically, how much fertilizer you have, how much land you have, etc. Or how much water you have to irrigate. But then there are a lot of uncontrollable variables which are dependent on weather at that time. So we at IBM are really working closely, taking all sorts of data to bring that data for a farmer on the farm for them to make a better decision. Now, with that, here's what a farmer can do. Farmer can look at what are the good days to do anything with the crops, and a lot of decision making overall. So I'll just quickly move forward and tell you that what we've done is, in order to bring this capability together, we've launched something called as Operations Dashboard, which I'll try and show you what it looks like very quickly. What I've done is here, my screen will take a minute to sort of sink in because there's a lot of data here. Avik, can you see my screen now?
I'm seeing the slide.
Okay, now just give it a second. So what I'm trying to show you is a live weather dashboard. Now, you may be at any location. I've actually centered this to ISB Mohali. So just give it a second to further get on. And on this dashboard, it is absolutely a decision-making tool to get you a view of, let's say you have 5 offices, or you have 5 hospitals, or you have 5 agricultural lands, or you have 5 airports. You can actually see live weather and configure the system to see alerts regarding rain, regarding any weather event, and you can configure this based on what really bothers. So let's say if you're in a low-lying area and you want to configure that if there's more than 10 rain forecast, I'll get flood. Can I put an alert? This whole thing is configurable. It's a live weather, as you see. So if you're in any part of India, you can figure out what's going on there and you get a forecast. And this is totally configurable, as I said. So the whole idea, ladies and gentlemen, what we're trying to do is that make weather really operational. You don't have to look for forecast and figure out what to do. I mean, key actions in certain businesses are on a daily basis or in a 1 or 2 day basis, or probably 15 days basis. So here what we've tried to do is all the data which we had, we have tried to bring it into a dashboard where you see pictorically what's going on. So I'll end my presentation here, and I would really say that India is really, I wouldn't say it is at a cusp, but I think what all of you, Avik and team, have done with Open Data website is the fact that you've now got people to crunch a lot of data, which makes us slightly more data-centric society than an emotional society. And I think there's if we can have more government departments contribute to this, as well as private players contribute to this, this would be really bringing a lot of value to all of us. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yes, thanks, Himanshu. That's a really awesome dashboard that you showed. And I could really think that if you have to take it to the farmers, maybe you can tie up with Reliance, and then the magic will work to the Indian farmers in Indian languages. So thanks. That was a very awesome presentation. Can I quickly go to Dipyaman?
All right, so I'll just quickly show you very direct cases. And they're both going to not take more than a couple of minutes. I'm going to ensure that. So I hope all of you guys can see my screen. Right? I'm guessing you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, excellent. So 2 things. One is the work that we did with NITI Aayog's data. So as a part of my consulting exercise, we were working with the National Skill Development Corporation. And one of the things that we worked on our key focus on working with that data, and NSDC has an enormous repository of data in their skills database management system, was to figure out what are the determinants of placements, because ultimately at the end of the day, the taxpayer money is being spent. The focus at that point is that can we figure out what are the underlying determinants of placement, and that then inform policy, right? So of course, NSDC has internal data which we used, and there are millions of data points in there. So fantastic, strong data set. It's not open data, but we use that as consultants. But when we needed district-wise statistic of a variety of kinds, right, whether it's education, healthcare, potable water, electricity, road coverage, we realized that these are all sitting in very, very different areas. Right? So from one side, we could get certain things. From another side, we could get certain other things. But what we came up with, or what we saw, was that NITI Aayog, wonderful to use. The unfortunate part was that the format that we had for NITI's data was quite clunky in some ways, that we couldn't use it. So what we did was we wrote a scraper to scrape down all this data, and then wrote a simple R code, which you can see here, and took the exact columns and variables that we needed from that data set, and ultimately created something which looks like this. And this is, again, this is just munging open data source, which has been collected by NITI. So think about the level, right? So first, census and the health surveys and all of these guys collected this data. Then NITI came around and collected at the district level, but not in a machine-readable format. Then we took that, right, wrote a scraper and a little data cleaning algo, and then we cleaned up that entire data. So for every district in this country, right, each and every one of them, we had a variety of data, right, from sex ratio to family planning to anemia, chronic illnesses, so on and so forth, right? And we did the same thing at the state level and created this data dictionary. Right? And what we did using that data is, I'm guessing you can see my presentation, right? We were doing a lot of preliminary analytics to understand within NSDC what the placements numbers would look like. So initially, we started off with all the features that we had within the system, right, and worked with the land and forest algorithm and so on and so forth. What we did was we added this entire open data piece in there to figure out that how each one of these variables, whether it's sex ratio, whether it's potable water, or whether it's women's health, how each one of them in turn, right, has a second degree effect on the success of my skilling schemes. All right. So that's one use case in consulting which I use, and I found it very interesting, and I have actually shared this data with many people so that they can use it as well, because it's government data. The other thing that I want to talk about and spend one more minute on that is I also run a startup. It's called PropMath. And what we do is we have built India's first AI/ML-driven prop tech company, and which works on very, very granular data. Right? So we're working with partners, secondary data sources, web data, all sorts of data, right? Social data. And what we needed was, demographic and information at the ward level, because a district, in terms of real estate, it's too big, right? Because you're primarily focusing on sub-district level or sub-city level, right? Your entire city of Calcutta is one district, right? Bangalore is Bangalore, urban and rural. We only care about urban. That's one district. So even the NITI Aayog data that was district level didn't really make a lot of sense. So what we did was we used the census data on the house listing and housing census from 2011, right? If you look at this data, this is incredibly detailed. So when we merged all of this, we looked at all sorts of things, whether what percentage of that particular ward owns computers or laptops, has internet access, without internet, to things like, the kind of latrines they have at home, to the kind of roofs of those households, right? The water source, and so on, at the locality, or at least the ward level, right? So when we're looking at wards, we are connecting it to 2 or 3 localities at the most, right? Because we have the pin code level locality data. So what we are doing at PropMath is we use this data along with data from one of our commercial partners. We are trying to partner with a mapping company and get their data as well. But already, just by using this and the real estate data that we have, we could create something which looks like this, right? And underlying this investor score that we have developed from scratch in a very opaque property market like India, right? I mean, even in the US, something like this would be very difficult to do. And we could do that. A large chunk of it, that investor score, that should I invest in this particular locality or not if I'm planning to buy a property? All these things that you see here, the housing buzz sentiment index to a lot of supply factors, the household formation, the underlying asset base of the households, large chunks of it actually comes from open data. And there was no way in hell we could have solved this problem unless we had access to something like that. So here are just 2 use cases. I just wanted to keep it short, and I hope I could pique your interest in the kind of work that's going on both on the consulting side. Right? We're using district level data for NSDC, and also developing new products. I think that's the future. That can we develop new products with the data that's open, that's out there. So that's all I had to say. Please go ahead.
Yes. So thanks, Deep. That was an awesome presentation about the 2 use cases which you quickly walked us through. Can I now invite Jatin, who is the CEO of Skymet, for the last presentation?
The theme is open data, and I don't necessarily want to speak about my company. I rather wanted to speak about open data because this is a very important topic, and I'll wrap it up in 7 minutes. The theme is that I think open data has become the enemy of data. Uh, I'm seeing this over the last 10 years. I'll tell you how I feel this is happening. So I started out as a weather forecasting company way back in 2003 by basically repackaging open data that was made available by the IMD. The problem with weather at that point of time was that it was, there were no newspaper graphics on weather. There was barely anything on television. And as I went along, I started improving the quality of data. I started investing in instrumentation. We started running weather models to the extent that we today have about 7,000 weather sensors. We've got 200-300 crop cameras now, a couple of thousand soil moisture sensors. We've got lightning sensors all over the country. We've got air pollution sensors. A lot of our data is actually freely available, although we are a commercial company. You can go to our website, skymetweather.com. You can download our app, the Skymet Weather app. You can, we've built something called Mumbai Rain. It's an app in which you have real-time weather, rainfall and flooding information all across Mumbai, and you can get a pretty decent forecast for the next couple of hours. We have built something called Kerala Rain, which is basically based on the same concept. And I could, just to give you a sense of my journey, I'm also founder of another company which is called Gramkar, which is a rural insurance brokerage, in which this aggregation of weather and agriculture data has allowed us to start financial products because your underwriting improves. And now we're working with banks, where Skymet is working with banks, where we're using aggregating farm data, individual farmer data, crop data, MSP data, monsoon data, and giving a credit score and allowing farmers to buy tractors or letting banks give them the KCCs. What I'm seeing over the last 10 years is that, say, a decade ago, there was this whole thing that data is the new oil. And what has turned into is that data is sunlight. Because there's an expectation by the people who run the internet that data is freely available. So pollution data just magically appears, or weather data just magically appears, or maps magically appear. The aggregators have taken away the premium that smaller data providers used to have. So so if you started a data company 10 years ago, you had a brighter prospect of monetizing it. The problem today is because there is this sense, and it is a sense because it is not true, that any kind of data should essentially be free. Then why should I pay for it? And that is then, not creating enough surpluses to be reinvested back into generation of organic data. So for instance, I'll take CPCB data, and that pollution data is what I need. But the fact is that the CPCB pollution data is very sparse. It has quality issues. And there are multiple other air pollution providers, but they keep on appearing and dying because people just think that I can use CPCB data, which might not be of the best quality. So, open data, the key thing is, where is this open data thing going to go? How are you going to incentivize the creators of data? It costs a lot of money, from computing to hardware to analysis to archiving, to actually keep on doing what they're doing. And what is happening is that more or less the government jumps into it, because the government then thinks that all data is a public good. But then data that is public good generated by the government comes with color. And I think over the next years, and you will see that skewing of information in a way that I think it used to be independent earlier, but it is not so much now, because it is just so hard to generate organic independent data sets. Anyway, so that is what I think about open data.
I think, Jatin, that was an awesome overview that you gave on open data. And I think some of the questions that you raised, we have a session at the end, the last panel discussion which starts at 4, which talks about this aspect of frameworks and sustainability on open data. There is a lot of money that is required to generate open data and make it available in a good format. We talked about format in the morning and how can that aspect be sustained. So I would like to thank you for that. It was really nice to see that. I'm also understanding that weather data, the way it is disseminated by the government, is not available in a format that individuals can digest it or consume it. So it's always, I see a lot of companies also in that space. There is a big role of companies and industry partners to make the data that has been made available by the government understandable and usable. I think that is a big role that you people are playing. And thanks for all your efforts and thanks for sharing your thoughts in the panel. Thank you very much. So now I hand over to Arushi to take the proceedings from here.
The keynote address for the session is by the leading tech leader, a lady who was ranked as the top 10 most influential analytics leader in India in 2019 by the Analytics India magazine. Rohini Srivathsa, Chief Technology Officer, Microsoft India. As National Technology Officer of Microsoft, Rohini is responsible for helping customers and partners across industry and government drive innovation and growth through tech intensity in the age of Industry 4.0. Her 25 plus years career spans across business and technology with strategy consulting at Boston Consultancy Group and IBM Global Business Services. Rohini, please over to you for your keynote address.
Thank you very much, Arushi, and it was very interesting to hear my co-panelists' comments before this. Clearly some important issues that have been brought up. I wanted to take this short time that I have to perhaps give a perspective from a large technology company that I represent as to why this whole topic of open data is becoming so important at all levels. Let me share my screen. I'm assuming you can see my screen. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. I think previous sessions and even the discussion that we were having just before this, there was enough understanding of what open data, the need for it, and use cases. But I want to just even at the risk of repeating a little bit, talk a little bit about the why of it and why we are as a global technology company really looking at this topic very closely and thinking about it. So let me have our president share a little bit on how at that level this topic is being discussed.
We're excited at Microsoft to launch a new campaign, an open data campaign. A campaign that we believe addresses one of the critical issues for the world today. Around the world, data is playing a more important role than ever. Humanity is creating more data than ever. In fact, each and every day, humanity creates more data in a single day than we did as a species in our entire history up until the year 2000. And we're doing more with data than ever before, whether it's pursuing great challenges in the fields of science and sustainability or advancing the economy. But if we're not careful, if we don't address the need for open data, we're going to fall into a new and looming data divide. Indeed, that's what the world already is confronting. According to one recent study, over half of the data generated on the internet each day is flowing to only 100 companies. Think about that, 100 businesses of the tens of millions of businesses around the world. And if we don't address this, we risk seeing economic generation, economic wealth following the same path. As PwC recently estimated, more than 70% of the economic value from artificial intelligence could flow to only two countries, the United States and China. All of this shows that we need to democratize artificial intelligence, and to do that, we need to start by opening up data. That's what our Open Data campaign aims to do. We launched this with an appreciation that many others are involved already as well. People in other companies, people in academia, people in the research field, and we are excited to join their effort, to join with a campaign to close the data divide. Our campaign has 3 pillars. The first is on 5 principles that we're adopting at Microsoft to ensure that we're sharing data, especially for the issues that are of broad societal impact. In addition, we're committing ourselves to a broad range of new partnerships and collaborations. We'll launch at least 20 new partnerships by the year 2022, in 2 years, to open up and share data in critical fields. Today, we're launching this partnership with the Open Data Institute, a leader in this field. And finally, we're committed to providing broad support for the entire data community around the world. We're doing this with new data tools and with the kinds of frameworks and models and licensing systems that we have found useful at Microsoft that we hope others will find useful as well.
The reason I wanted to share this clip by Brad is because to demonstrate that this topic is for us very critical and at a level at the president's level that it's being discussed. The learnings that we have had in this space come from the field of open source, and we have had a journey in this space in open source that has helped us think about how to think about this area of open data and what are the key takeaways and why we feel so passionate about it. And I'll go a little bit fast because in some ways Brad's video has given some sense of how we're thinking about open data, but I'll just quickly give a sense for the learnings we've gotten from open source and the key initiatives and things that we are doing in the space of open data, with the idea of clearly artificial intelligence and the ability to draw value from data, which is at the end the end goal. Our open source journey has been going on since 2014, and Satya started that with Microsoft Loves Linux. And if you look at this page, over the years we've been really going down our path of creating, whether it's SQL on Linux, and then finally GitHub acquisition that landed 2018, 2019. And the final GitHub, that step was taken because as an organization, we went through this whole process of learning that there are very clear benefits of open source. There is benefits to integrate with the community. There is best practices one can share. There's cross-platform design and development one can get, recruiting, retention. People want to work with technologies that are open source. There is contribution. There is a necessity to understand, interoperability, working with your customers. And finally, you release what you have created to release out of the GitHub. So in a way, it became part of the way we do business. And our learning of the open source journey, I think, has been an important part of our thinking about open data. And today, if you see Microsoft Azure, which is the cloud, is delivering open source innovation at scale. And you can see all kinds of open source vendors and tools and frameworks and applications that are out there. So in many ways, we as an organization have transformed ourselves in the last 6-7 years into a very open source organization. And that has also led, as I said, some learnings on open data. So just quickly on Microsoft's approach, and Brad talked about it, so I want to give a bit of a sense for what he was talking about. When we talk about principles, and some of the speakers before me were speaking about this fact that, data is out there, but, making it usable requires certain thinking, whether it's in terms of security, privacy. So we have come up with 5 principles, to think about what do we mean by collaboration and what are the principles that we'll work with. And some of these I will go a little bit in more detail, but not all of them clearly. But idea of data being open needs to also be usable. It needs to also empower people who have the domain expertise to solve some problems. And clearly there are issues of security and privacy that have to be thought through, and we've seen some of that play out in the COVID-19 world. wherein data sharing could be considered as an emergency, but you have to still think about what it means in the long term. As Brad mentioned, we are looking at data collaborations in a big way. Some of them are already in the works. Putting a number 20 out there is a commitment basically in the next 2 years. But if you think about the work that we already do, for example, with the World Bank, the LinkedIn work with World Bank in terms of economic policy, you may be aware of LinkedIn economic graph. We've been doing some work more recently on the COVID-19 in terms of blood samples and understanding immune response of the body. As a platform, we have the ability to create that space where data can be shared and can be used by different players and accelerate development of drugs and development of the healthcare situation that we are in. And of course, there are many other similar use cases. There are tools and capabilities required for sharing data. There are agreements, there are data usage details, and how, in what way data can be used. Is it used for one-time use? Is it used in a different, for computational use, etc.? So we have created our own set of agreements that are simple to use. They're out there. Of course, there are many other sources of agreement that one can use. And similarly, we are putting out there tools. Differential privacy is one of such tools, and we had collaborated with Harvard in 2016 to create this. And the idea of differential privacy is that, by the way, it's on GitHub. The idea is that when a user queries a particular data to train a model, it adds some statistical noise to it, which is intended to protect privacy. But then again, if it queries again and again, one can compromise privacy. So it has certain limitations. So it's a built-in idea of how can you leverage data by even preserving privacy. There are tons of open data repositories out there that again we have put out there as a set of information. But at the end of the day, the role of artificial, I apologize, there's a little bit of noise here. Sorry, can you hear me still?
Yes, Rohini.
I apologize for this. I may actually close it because I do want to talk about the fact that it's about empowerment, but I'll close it. I'm conscious of the fact that there's some noise here. At the end of the day, it is about empowering people to use data to create meaningful innovation. And the kind of things that we see as a global company across, and we talked about the agriculture point, the fisheries, the example that was put forth. There are tons of such similar examples, but the work that we are doing on AI for good, which is across accessibility. In fact, just yesterday I was on a hackathon that was looking at accessibility solutions for India, for disabled people, going all the way from child learning issues around dyslexia and autism to physical disabilities. So many of them require data to be able to really solve the problems for the tough challenges that we face. I'll just end with that. At the end of the day, the use of data and AI is to help solve the real problems that we want to solve. And it's not just about what computers can do, but what computers should do. I'll just end with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rohini, for the keynote address. I would request you to please stay back for announcing the hackathon winners. So the Bharti Institute of Public Policy, India School of Business, had organized an open data hackathon using agriculture data available on the India Data Portal. We had an enthusiastic participation of 300 registered teams for the hackathon. We had partnered with our technology partner, Gramener, and cloud support by Microsoft India for organizing this hackathon. Thanks, Rohini, for that. And once again, our thanks to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for supporting our initiative of the India Data Portal. Now I request Rohini to please announce the winners of the Open Data Hackathon in reverse order, please. I would also go ahead and share my screen so that we can discuss, we can actually, talk about the details and the solutions that were proposed by the winning teams. So Rohini, the second runners-up, please.
Thank you, Arushi. So it's my pleasure to announce the second runner-up from the hackathon, Vinayak Karande. Congratulations, and very interesting to see the solution that you have built using data to increase farmers' income. Thank you so much. Congratulations again.
Thanks, Rohini. Congratulations, Vinayak, for being the second runners-up of the hackathon. Let's go ahead and announce the the first runner-up of this competition.
All right, my pleasure to announce the first runner-up, the group from Team 102, Arath Majithai, sorry if I'm not pronouncing the name, Arath, Vedant, Naman, and Atmanand. Congratulations, and looks like a very interesting, again, visualization and analytical tool for farmers and policymakers. Thank you so much for your participation and congratulations.
Thanks, Rohini. So Fasal AI team, heartiest congratulations for being the first runner-up of the hackathon.
Oh, I like the name also, Fasal AI, very nice.
Yes, Fasal AI, and these are young analysts actually who are there in this team. Really amazing, congratulations.
That's great, yes.
And we have the winner team for the hackathon being organized by the India Data Portal. And this is, please, over to you, Rohini.
Yes, so the first, the winner in this case is the team Anant, Bibeshan, Archana, and Dhruv. And I think they have also created some an approach to determine crop plantation based on historic data points. Again, interesting and important topic. And congratulations. And first of all, thank you for participating. And really, I have to thank ISB and the Institute for taking this lead on this important topic and getting people together to think about the challenges and using open data to solve for them. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Rohini. And congratulations, Team Sekru. So Anand, Sekru is your foundation, and you guys have done a wonderful work. Heartiest congratulations. So the winners of this hackathon get a cash award of 1 lakh rupees. The first runners-up get a cash award of 50,000 rupees, and the second runners-up gets 25,000 rupees. Congratulations, all the three teams. Yes, thank you. So thank you once again, Rohini, for being here. And I'll just